To challenge the morning sun cast long shadows across the crystalline training grounds of Zephyr Prime Combat Academy. This wasn't just any military facility. For 3 centuries, it had been the galaxy's most prestigious institution for creating elite warriors. Species from across the known systems sent their finest specimens here, hoping to forge them into weapons capable of protecting their civilizations. Commander Krexthal stood on the elevated observation platform, his scaled hide gleaming like polished armor in the artificial light. The Saurian warrior was a legend throughout the galaxy, his reputation built on the broken bodies of countless opponents. His yellow eyes surveyed the newest batch of recruits with the cold assessment of a predator evaluating prey. Today would be different. Today, for the first time in the Academy's history, humans would join their ranks. The massive doors to the training hall groaned open, and 3 figures walked through. They moved with quiet confidence, but to the alien observers, they appeared almost laughably fragile. Captain Alina Vasquez led the group, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her brown eyes taking in every detail of her surroundings. Behind her walked Dr. Marcus Chen, a slight man whose calm demeanor masked decades of survival training experience. The third human, Sarah Mitchell, was barely 20 years old, her blonde hair and bright green eyes making her look more like a student than a warrior. The assembly hall buzzed with whispered conversations in dozens of alien languages. The Orcanian cadets, each standing nearly 8 feet tall with muscle-bound frames that could crush steel, chuckled among themselves. Their tusked faces showed obvious amusement at these soft-looking newcomers. The insectoid Zekthani clicked, their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their species, their compound eyes reflecting the humans in thousands of tiny fragments. Krexthal raised one clawed hand, and silence fell like a curtain across the hall. His voice, when he spoke, carried the authority of absolute power. Today, we welcome our newest participants. The humans believe they belong among warriors. His tongue flicked out, tasting the air. We shall see if this belief has merit. Alina stepped forward, her posture relaxed but alert. She had expected this reception. Humans were new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Most species viewed them as weak upstarts, barely evolved from primitive hunter-gatherers. They had no idea how wrong they were. Commander Krexthal, Alina said, her voice carrying clearly across the vast space. We're honored to train alongside the galaxy's finest warriors. We hope to learn much from your methods. A low growl rumbled from the Orcanian section. Warlord Thane Grimjaw, the largest of their number, stepped forward. His scarred hide told the story of countless battles, and his tusks bore ceremonial rings marking his victories. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. Learn. What could prey teach predators? Dr. Chen adjusted his glasses, a gesture that seemed almost comically civilian in this setting. An interesting question, Warlord Thane. Perhaps we might demonstrate different approaches to the same problem. Krexthal's eyes narrowed. In all his years running this academy, no species had ever questioned their methods. The training here was brutal, designed to break the weak and forge the strong. It had worked for centuries. Why would these soft mammals think they had anything to offer? Very well, Krexthal hissed. Captain Vasquez, you will demonstrate human combat capability. Warlord Thane will serve as your opponent. The Saurian commander's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. This will be educational for all involved. The combat circle was an ancient design, carved from single piece of diamond-hard crystal. It had witnessed the defeat of thousands of would-be warriors over the centuries, as Alina and Thane faced each other across its circumference. The size difference was startling. The Orcanian warrior stood nearly 3 feet taller and outweighed the human by at least 200 pounds. Sarah leaned toward Dr. Chen, worry clear in her voice. Should we stop this? Thane could kill her without even trying. Marcus shook his head slightly. Alina volunteered for a reason. Watch and learn. The signal came, and Thane moved with surprising speed for his size. His massive fist cut through the air where Elena's head had been a split second before. She had rolled aside, her smaller size allowing her to move in ways the bulkier warrior couldn't match, but Thane was experienced. He anticipated her movement and brought his other hand around in a devastating backhand. The blow connected with a sickening crack, sending Alina flying across the crystal circle. She hit the barrier wall and slid to the ground, blood streaming from her nose and mouth. The alien spectators nodded approvingly. This was how combat should end, quickly and decisively. But Alina wasn't finished. She wiped blood from her mouth and stood up, her legs shaky but supporting her weight. The hall fell silent again, but this time the silence was different. There was confusion in it, and the beginning of something like respect. Interesting technique, Alina said, her voice slightly nasal from her broken nose. Mind if we try again? Thane's expression shifted from triumph to puzzlement. In his experience, beings who took hits like that didn't get back up. They certainly didn't ask for more. You should stay down, human. I do not wish to permanently damage you, Alina smiled, and blood stained her teeth. Damage is just information. It tells you what doesn't work so you can try something that does. The second exchange was different. Thane threw the same powerful combination, but this time Alina wasn't where she was supposed to be. She had learned from the first impact, calculated the timing, adjusted her movement. His fist passed harmlessly through empty air, while her elbow found a nerve cluster just below his ribs. Thane grunted in surprise and pain. The strike hadn't been powerful enough to seriously hurt him, but it had been placed with surgical precision. No warrior in the academy had ever targeted that specific weakness before. The battle continued for another 10 minutes. Alina took tremendous punishment, her uniform torn and bloody, her body marked with bruises that would last for weeks. But with each exchange, she learned something new. She began to predict Thane's attacks, not through superior reflexes, but through pattern recognition and adaptation. Her counterattacks became more accurate, finding weak points that the Orcanian didn't even know he possessed. Finally, Thane made a mistake. He overextended on a powerful right cross, expecting Alina to retreat as she had done before. Instead, she stepped inside his guard and struck 3 pressure points in rapid succession. The massive warrior's legs buckled, and he crashed to his knees, paralyzed by the nerve strikes. The hall erupted in chaos. Never in the Academy's history had a being 1/3 an opponent's size achieved victory through technique alone. Alina helped Thane to his feet as feeling returned to his legs, an act of respect that surprised the watching aliens even more than her victory. Commander Krexthal leaped down from his observation platform, landing with feline grace despite his size, his yellow eyes fixed on Alina with new interest. Explain what you did. Alina straightened, ignoring the pain that shot through her ribs. We adapted. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned that size and strength aren't everything. Intelligence, adaptability, and determination can overcome almost any disadvantage. Dr. Chen stepped forward, Commander, if I may suggest an experiment, allow us to train alongside your cadets for 1 month. Let our methods supplement yours. See what happens when different approaches to warfare combine. Krextel was quiet. For a long moment, his reptilian brain processing this unprecedented situation. Finally, he nodded slowly. 1 month, but understand, human, that our methods have created warriors for 3 centuries. Your people have been in space for barely 50 years. Sarah spoke for the first time since entering the hall. Respectfully, Commander, we've been fighting for survival for 3 million years. We're just now getting good at it. The Academy's rigid structure began to change that very day. Alina worked with the medical staff to develop new healing protocols based on human physiology. Marcus introduced tactical training that emphasized flexibility and problem-solving over brute force. Sarah, despite being the youngest human present, demonstrated survival techniques that amazed even veteran instructors. The alien cadets initially resisted these changes. They had been taught that strength was everything, that the strong ruled and the weak served. But as days passed, even the most skeptical began to see the value in human methods. The Zekthani discovered that their natural hive-mind communication gave them an advantage in human-style team tactics. The Orcanians found that their raw power became even more effective when guided by human strategic thinking. Warlord Thane became an unexpected ally. His defeat had taught him humility, something his species rarely experienced. He worked closely with Alina, learning to combine strength with human adaptability. The results were extraordinary, but not everyone welcomed these changes. A faction of instructors, led by Sub-Commander Vextar, believed the humans were weakening the Academy's warrior tradition. They began planning their own demonstration, one designed to prove that human methods were inferior to time-tested alien superiority. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test everything both sides believed about strength, survival, and what it truly meant to be a warrior. As the first month of joint training neared its end, none of them could predict how dramatically their world was about to change. The reckoning, the morning of the final demonstration, arrived with an ominous stillness. Commander Krextel stood before the assembled Academy, his expression unreadable as he watched the fruits of the past month's unprecedented cooperation. The changes had been remarkable. Alien cadets, who had once relied solely on brute force, now employed tactical thinking. Species that had never worked together were functioning as unified teams. But Sub-Commander Vextar had been busy during those weeks. The Nexarian officer had gathered a coalition of instructors who believed the human influence was corrupting their warrior traditions. Standing beside him were the Academy's most conservative voices: Battlemaster Corinth of the Saurian elite, Guard, Warchief Brack of the Orcanian traditionalists, and High Tactician Zixera of the Zekthani military caste. Today we settle this question once and for all, Vextar announced, his metallic voice carrying across the vast training ground. The humans claim their methods can improve upon centuries of proven tradition. We shall test this claim under real combat conditions. Alina felt a chill despite the warm artificial atmosphere. She recognized the look in Vextar's silver eyes. This wasn't going to be a demonstration. This was going to be a war. Dr. Chen stepped forward, his usually calm demeanor showing the first signs of strain. Sub-Commander, what exactly are you proposing? Vextar's lip plates curved in a cold smile. A simple exercise. Your integrated teams against our traditional forces. Real weapons, real consequences. The losing side will accept that their methods are inferior and abandon them permanently. Sarah Mitchell, who had grown tremendously in confidence over the past month, spoke up, "And if we refuse, then you confirm what we have always known," Battlemaster Corinth hissed, "that humans are cowards who hide behind words when faced with true combat." The assembled cadets stirred uneasily. The alien students who had been training with human methods looked uncertain. The bonds they had forged over the past month suddenly seemed fragile in the face of this challenge. Alina made her decision. "We accept." Marcus shot her a sharp look. "Alina, this is exactly what they want. They're trying to prove that cooperation is weakness." "Then we'll prove them wrong," Alina replied quietly. "The same way we always have." The Academy's main combat arena was a massive sphere, 300 meters in diameter, filled with obstacles that simulated real battlefield conditions. Floating platforms, energy barriers, and defensive positions created a complex three-dimensional battleground. The traditional alien force took their positions with confidence. They had trained in this arena for years, knew every advantage it offered. The integrated human-alien teams seemed small in comparison. Alina had worked with a mixed group that included Thane, 2 Zekthani warriors named Tekri and Velka, and a young Saurian female called Sira, who had embraced human tactical methods with surprising enthusiasm. Marcus led another team composed entirely of cadets who had volunteered to learn human survival techniques. Sarah, despite her youth, commanded a rapid response unit that specialized in the adaptability training she had developed. As the teams took their positions, Krextol activated the arena's combat protocols. Energy weapons hummed to life. Their settings adjusted to cause serious injury without permanent damage. The stakes were real, even if the weapons weren't lethal. The traditional forces attacked first, as Alina had known they would. It was a textbook assault, perfectly executed according to galactic military doctrine. Overwhelming force applied at the enemy's weakest point, designed to break resistance quickly and decisively. But the human-trained teams weren't where they were supposed to be. Alina had spent the past month teaching her allies that predictability was death. When Battlemaster Corinth's elite Saurian warriors struck at what should have been their main defensive position, they found empty air and carefully placed explosive charges. The blast sent them tumbling through the zero-gravity sections of the arena, disoriented and vulnerable. Thane and his hybrid team used classic Orcanian strength, but guided it with human strategy. Instead of charging directly into enemy fire, they used the arena's obstacles for cover, approaching their targets from unexpected angles. The warlord's massive frame provided protection for his smaller teammates, while their agility allowed them to strike at weak points in enemy formations. Zekthani had perhaps benefited most from human training. Their natural hive-mind communication, combined with human flexible tactics, created a coordination that even their own species had never achieved before. Tekri and Velka moved like extensions of a single mind, anticipating each other's actions and supporting moves that seemed impossible. But the traditional forces weren't helpless. They had centuries of combat experience and the advantage of familiar terrain. Warchief Brack led a devastating counterattack that shattered Sarah's rapid response unit, sending the young woman tumbling toward the arena's lower levels with severe energy burns across her back. Dr. Chen's academic team found themselves surrounded by Nixarian shock troops, their theoretical knowledge no match for hardened veterans. Marcus took a plasma bolt to the shoulder that left his left arm useless, but he kept coordinating his team's movements, even as their position became increasingly hopeless. The battle turned when Subcommander Vextar made a crucial mistake. Confident in his force's superiority, he ordered a final assault designed to crush the remaining human-trained teams simultaneously. It was a perfect tactical maneuver, flawlessly executed. Under normal circumstances, it would have ended the combat immediately. But Alina had been watching, learning, adapting. She recognized the pattern of the attack and realized something the Nexarian commander had overlooked. His assault plan required precise timing and left his own position temporarily undefended. Thane, Marcus, Sarah, she called over the communication. System, execute, Plan Omega. Plan Omega didn't exist in any tactical manual. The human teams had never practiced it or even discussed it, but they understood what Alina meant because they had learned to think like humans. When the plan you trained for isn't working, you make up a new plan, asterisk. Thane abandoned his defensive position and launched himself directly at Battlemaster Corinth, accepting massive damage from energy weapons in exchange for a chance to engage the Saurian commander in close combat. Marcus ordered his academic team to use their theoretical knowledge practically, turning the arena's environmental systems against the traditional forces. Sarah, despite her injuries, led her scattered team in a desperate assault on War Chief Brack's seemingly impregnable position. None of these actions should have worked. Each one violated basic tactical principles and placed the forces at severe disadvantage. But together, they created chaos that the traditional forces couldn't adapt to. High tactician, Sixara found her perfectly ordered battle plan falling apart as human unpredictability spread through the combat zone. Like a virus, her Zekthani forces, trained for coordinated assault, struggled to respond to opponents who seemed to change strategy every few seconds. The turning point came when Commander Krextel himself entered the arena. The massive Saurian had been watching the battle with growing alarm. What had begun as a demonstration was becoming a bloodbath. Several cadets from both sides were seriously injured, and the traditional force's frustration was leading to increasingly dangerous attacks. Krextel moved to stop Sub-Commander Vextar from ordering a killing blow against Sarah's position. But the Nexarian officer was beyond reason. In his fury at seeing his perfect tactical superiority challenged by crude human adaptability, he turned his weapon on his own commander. The energy blast caught Krextel in the spine, severing neural pathways and sending the legendary warrior crashing to the arena floor. The attack was so shocking that both sides stopped fighting, staring in disbelief at their fallen commander. Alina reached him first, her medical training taking over despite her own injuries. The damage was severe. Krextel's lower body was completely paralyzed, and internal bleeding was rapidly becoming life-threatening. "Don't," Krextel whispered as Alina began emergency treatment. "A warrior who cannot fight should not survive." "That's not how humans think," Alina replied, her hands working quickly to stabilize his condition. "We believe that warriors who survive become teachers, and teachers are more valuable than fighters." Around them, the artificial divisions between traditional and integrated forces crumbled. Alien cadets who had spent the past hour trying to kill each other now worked together to provide medical aid and establish security. Thane carried wounded Saurians to safety while Saurian medics treated injured Orcanians. The Zekthani used their communication abilities to coordinate rescue efforts across species lines. Sub-Commander Vextar found himself alone, his traditional allies horrified by his attack on their commanding officer. The Nexarian officer realized, too late, that his obsession with proving superiority had cost him everything he claimed to be defending. Dr. Chen, despite his wounded arm, took charge of the medical efforts. His theoretical knowledge of xenobiology proved invaluable in treating injuries across multiple species. Sarah, her back covered in bandages but her spirit unbroken, organized the cadets into effective rescue teams that cleared the arena of debris and casualties. But it was Lena who performed the most crucial task, using techniques developed during her months of cross-species training. She managed to stabilize Commander Krextal's condition long enough for the Academy's advanced medical systems to begin repairs. The surgery would take hours, and full recovery might be impossible. But the legendary warrior would live. As the medical teams worked, the Academy faced a fundamental question. With their asterisk, the answer came from an unexpected source. The cadets themselves, both alien and human trained, petitioned the Academy board to continue the integrated training program. They had seen what cooperation could accomplish, even in the face of deliberate sabotage. Warlord Thane, speaking for the Orcanian delegation, put it most clearly. We came here believing that strength was everything. The humans taught us that. Strength without wisdom is just violence. Wisdom without courage is just fear. But strength, wisdom, and courage together create something greater than any of us could achieve alone. 3 weeks later, Commander Krextal attended the graduation ceremony from a hover chair. His lower body still paralyzed, but his mind sharp as ever. The ceremony was unlike any in the Academy's history. Instead of individual species receiving recognition for martial prowess, integrated teams were honored for their innovation, cooperation, and adaptability. Dr. Chen stepped forward. Commander, if I may suggest an experiment. Allow us to train alongside your cadets for 1 month. Let our methods supplement yours. See what happens when different approaches to warfare combine. Krextal was quiet for a long moment, his reptilian brain processing this unprecedented situation. Finally, he nodded slowly. 1 month, but understand, human, that our methods have created warriors for 3 centuries. Your people have been in space for barely 50 years. Sarah spoke for the first time since entering the hall, respectfully. Commander, we've been fighting for survival for 3 million years. We're just now getting good at it. The Academy's rigid structure began to change that very day. Alina worked with the medical staff to develop new healing protocols based on human physiology. Marcus introduced tactical training that emphasized flexibility and problem-solving over brute force. Sarah, despite being the youngest human present, demonstrated survival techniques that amazed even veteran instructors. The alien cadets initially resisted these changes. They had been taught that strength was everything, that the strong ruled and the weak served. But as days passed, even the most skeptical began to see the value in human methods. The Zekthani discovered that their natural hive-mind communication gave them an advantage in human-style team tactics. The Orcanians found that their raw power became even more effective when guided by human strategic thinking. Warlord Thane became an unexpected ally. His defeat had taught him humility, something his species rarely experienced. He worked closely with Alina, learning to combine Orcanian strength with human adaptability. The results were extraordinary, but not everyone welcomed these changes. A faction of instructors, led by Sub-Commander Vexstar, believed the humans were weakening the Academy's warrior tradition. They began planning their own demonstration, one designed to prove that human methods were inferior to time-tested alien superiority. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test everything both sides believed about strength, survival, and what it truly meant to be a warrior. As the first month of joint training neared its end, none of them could predict how dramatically their world was about to change. Asterisk. The reckoning the morning of the final demonstration arrived with an ominous stillness. Commander Krextol stood before the assembled academy, his expression unreadable as he watched the fruits of the past month's unprecedented cooperation. The changes had been remarkable. Alien cadets who had once relied solely on brute force now employed tactical thinking. Species that had never worked together were functioning as unified teams. But Sub-Commander Vextar had been busy during those weeks. The Nexarian officer had gathered a coalition of instructors who believed the human influence was corrupting their warrior traditions. Standing beside him were the Academy's most conservative voices: Battlemaster Corinth of the Saurian elite, Guard, Warchief Brack of the Orcanian traditionalists, and High Tactician Zixora of the Zekthani military caste. "Today we settle this question once and for all," Vextar announced, his metallic voice carrying across the vast training ground. "The humans claim their methods can improve upon centuries of proven tradition. We shall test this claim under real combat conditions." As the medical teams worked, the Academy faced a fundamental question. With their commander incapacitated and their traditional structure shattered, how would they proceed? The answer came from an unexpected source. The cadets themselves, both alien and human trained, petitioned the Academy board to continue the integrated training program. They had seen what cooperation could accomplish, even in the face of deliberate sabotage. Warlord Thane, speaking for the Orcanian delegation, put it most clearly: "We came here believing that strength was everything. The humans taught us that strength without wisdom is just violence. Wisdom without courage is just fear. But strength, wisdom, and courage together create something greater than any of us could achieve alone." 3 weeks later, Commander Krexel attended the graduation ceremony from a hoverchair, his lower body still paralyzed, but his mind sharp as ever. The ceremony was unlike any in the Academy's history. Instead of individual species receiving recognition for martial prowess, integrated teams were honored for their innovation, cooperation, and adaptability. Alena stood with her mixed species unit as they received the Academy's highest honor, the Warrior's Bond. Beside her, Thane wore the insignia with quiet pride. Tekri and Velka had been promoted to advanced tactical positions, their species' first representatives in the Academy's Strategic Planning Division. Sarah Mitchell, barely 21 years old, had been offered a position as an instructor, making her the youngest faculty member in galactic history. Dr. Chen was already working on new training protocols that would be implemented across the Federation's military academies. But the most significant change was in Commander Krextol himself. His injury had taught him something about adaptation that no amount of training could have provided. In his address to the graduating class, he spoke words that would be remembered for generations. "I believed that warriors were born strong and became stronger through combat. I was wrong. True warriors are born adaptable and become stronger through learning. The humans did not make us weak. They made us complete." As the ceremony concluded and the new graduates prepared for their assignments across the galaxy, Alena reflected on the past months. They had come to this academy expecting to learn from alien warriors. Instead, they had taught the galaxy something more valuable than any combat technique. They had shown that survival wasn't about being the strongest predator. It was about being strong enough, smart enough, and adaptable enough to turn any challenge into an opportunity for growth. In the end, That was the most human thing of all. The academy continued under new leadership, with integrated training becoming the standard rather than the exception. Sub-Commander Vexter was court-martialed and dismissed from service, his actions serving as a cautionary tale about the dangers of rigid thinking in a changing galaxy. But perhaps the most fitting tribute to the transformation came from an unexpected source. A year later, when the Academy faced attack from hostile raiders, it was the integrated defense teams that repelled the assault. Alien strength, guided by human adaptability, fighting not as separate species, but as a unified force. The raiders never knew what hit them. They had expected to face traditional military responses they could predict and counter. Instead, they encountered something entirely new in galactic warfare, an enemy that could learn, adapt, and overcome any challenge through cooperation rather than domination. As the hostile fleet retreated in confusion and defeat, Commander Krextol smiled from his command chair. His spine might be shattered, but his spirit had never been stronger. The humans had taught them all a valuable lesson about what it truly meant to be unbreakable. Sometimes the greatest strength came not from never falling, but from always getting back up. Asterisk.